Hi, I'm Diana Giselle Yanez, host of Highly Sensitive Money. I'm a money coach, certified financial planner, and a highly sensitive person who brings money and social justice together. If you're someone who feels deeply, can endlessly think through how one decision affects everything else, or has ever struggled with all the things that traditional financial thinking leaves out, you're in the right place. In this show, I chat with highly sensitive people on how they handle their money, and with money experts on how they cultivate social justice in their work. Questions? Please go to allthecolors.net and schedule a free 30-minute call. And I'm happy to share resources on investment management, money coaching, workshops, or anything else money and social justice related. Join us in this episode as we explore money and sensitivity while honoring that all of our well-being is interconnected. Today, I'll be speaking with leadership coach and facilitator Stacy Kellogg about what it means to honor our capacity while still caring deeply for others. Stacy shares her journey from years in social justice nonprofits where the work mattered, but burnout was constant, to creating a coaching practice that allows her to pour from an overflowing rather than empty cup. We explore the tension so many of us feel when our care is bigger than our capacity, the messages we've internalized about not being selfish, and how that can lead to overgiving. Stacy also opens up about the money blueprints she inherited from her family and the resources that helped her redesign her relationship with earnings, needs, and wants. Together, we reflect on how collective support, rest, and equitable approaches to money can transform not only our work, but our lives. Well, welcome, Stacy. I'm excited to speak to you on Highly Sensitive Money. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for our conversation too.
And just as we get started, I would love it for you to introduce yourself to listeners, like the work you do today, and also share about your podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Stacy Raye Kellogg. I am a leadership coach and a heart-centered facilitator. And I work with sensitive, high-achieving leaders that often their care and their commitment to making change is bigger than their capacity. So they may be saying yes to a lot of external forces, both at work and home, and not saying yes so much to themselves. So I help them learn how to allow themselves to honor what they need and want as well.
I love that their care is often bigger than their capacity.
Yeah, that's something I've seen a lot in myself, and I see in a lot of my clients, both individual coaching clients, but also in teams and organizations as well.
So in listening to your podcast, Outgrow the Grind, I have a little bit of a background on how you got to your current position. So I know that you started really actively in the nonprofit world, right? So social justice was really, in some sense, moving your work. And then you went into personal development.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, realized that you weren't taking as much care of yourself as you would want to, even though you loved the job you had. And I think it's been the past 5 years, like maybe a little bit before the pandemic, that you went out on your own, started coaching.
Yeah.
And now you've grown into coaching groups. So I would love for you to fill in that story a little bit more.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah, my business just turned 6 on August 9th. So that's been fun to look at the past 6 years and all the different twists and turns. Yeah. So I started out in the nonprofit sector. I worked in the nonprofit sector primarily, as you said, with social justice nonprofits for over 15 years. So a lot of work with survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. I did some work in affordable housing in San Francisco, writing grants for an affordable housing agency. I worked for a nonprofit that had rehabilitation programs for inmates inside of San Quentin State Prison. Also did some job skills training in San Francisco for folks that were seeking employment or perhaps they were underemployed. So I was doing a lot of really interesting stuff. In addition to that, when I was living in Brooklyn, I worked for an international human rights organization, lots of stuff that's really important, really mattered to me. But I reached a point of a lot of burnout where I felt like this is not lighting me up anymore. I felt like when people asked me what I did, I loved answering the question because I liked getting that sort of external validation of like, oh, we should have more people like you, or we should clone you, like you have a big heart, like all of these things that people would say would feel so good. But the reality of it was like if I was working a 50, 60-hour week and I'd come home feeling totally like a sponge that had been squeezed out. And I wasn't excited about what I was doing. I had the realization that I was kind of doing it for that external validation. And it wasn't really lighting me up or feeding me anymore. I had an experience where one of those nonprofits I worked at, I had this realization like, wow, my coworkers really love watching the news and like being up to date on what's happening in terms of human rights violations. And I kind of was like, I'm so burnt out. I'm not interested. Like, I'm not even watching the news. That's not like, I'm not there. Like, I'm so tired at the end of the day. Like, watching the news is the last thing I want to do. So I kind of had this epiphany like, you can't pour from an empty cup. And my cup was empty. And I didn't have a lot of places in my life where I was like being creative or allowing myself to sort of follow my own joy and my own needs and wants and dreams. And at that time, I started being a student of personal development. I signed up for a course for women. And I started like having this realization like, oh, wow, I'm the one who decides what I do with my life. Like, I don't have to do something just for that like external validation on the outside. And then it feels lonely and kind of miserable and burnt out on the inside. So I ended up leaving my job at this social justice nonprofit that I had worked so hard to get, but I ended up leaving it and moving across the country and working with flowers for a while and just letting myself like take a pay cut and work with flowers and like let it be okay that I had a student loan to pay for my master's in nonprofit administration. And I was still going to do this because it's what my heart wanted and needed to do. So I did that. There's some other twists and turns there. I went on a 800-mile hike on the Pacific Crest Trail in 2017. And while I was there, the personal growth and development program that I had been a student of was hiring. And so I ended up applying for that job, moving back across the country from Portland to New York City and working in women's empowerment and really falling in love with coaching, having conversations with women about like, where are you now? What do you really want? What do you want less of? Where do you want to say yes? Where do you want to say no? So I really fell in love with coaching and started taking coaching classes and also started kind of getting into the art of facilitation and getting excited about that. So I'm a learner. And so I really started gathering up all sorts of as many classes as I could take and learn as many things as I could. And now 6 years later, I'm doing the work that I love with amazing, big-hearted, sensitive people. And I feel so grateful and fortunate to get to do this.
Yeah. Wow. So I really hear that the work that you're doing now is really lighting you up.
Yeah.
Right. And you really did follow your joy into deciding what works for you and who do you want to serve. So congratulations. It's always so good to hear on the other side of the hero's journey, right? Like, what was it like? What did you learn?
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that you said hero's journey because there's a book called the heroine's journey around how often a woman's journey is different than sort of the Joseph Campbell go out to the mountain, achieve, accomplish by yourself. And one thing that's been a big theme in my journey is a lot of connection, a lot of learning and being part of small collectives and groups of people that I'm learning with. I like to put a plug in for like how, different people's journeys might be different than that sort of template hero's journey. And I think we have kind of a way as a society and a culture of saying, like, if you have a goal, you've got to like do whatever it takes to climb to the top of the mountain and reach that by yourself. And one of the things I've been really proud of or really inspired by is that journey being a collective one, being one that includes lots of other people on the same journey, or mentors, or, folks like you that are like inspiring other people in their podcast. And I guess I just want to put a plug in for that reminder of like, we get to do this however we want. We don't have to struggle and toil away alone, like this myth that we get kind of handed down.
Right. Thank you for that reminder that it's not like a solo. It's not no man is an island, right? No person is an island.
Yeah.
And I know that you were referred to me over by Val Nelson, right? So like at the end of the day, even though maybe we were working both very online, we're still making connections person by person.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's so important, especially for us sensitive folks that like, maybe want to create our own way of doing something. We don't have to do it alone.
Mm-hmm. We don't have to do it alone, and we don't have to do it at someone else's pace. Because when I heard you open up this conversation with like sometimes their sense of care is bigger than their capacity, as someone who's somewhat new to seeing myself as highly sensitive, out of like the 37 years I've been around, it's been like the last 3 that I've been like, maybe I am highly sensitive.
Yeah.
I'm like, why is my capacity not as big as my care, or why isn't my care smaller? And I wonder what do you think as I say that? What do you feel?
Wow, I got goosebumps when you said, why isn't my care smaller? And it made me feel a little sad, because this society that we live in, we get so many messages that it's like, don't care too much, but care enough. It's like that tightrope walking of like too much, not enoughness. And our care is such a beautiful thing. And it's precious too. Our attention is so precious. So when you said, wish that my care was smaller, it's like, I guess I felt a little sad, and it resonated with me because so many times working in nonprofits, I felt that way too. It was like, I can't do everything. I can't like volunteer for every shift on the hotline. Like, I just can't. Like, there's a limit. I do have capacity limits. And that was hard, being a big-hearted, sensitive person sometimes. And I also think, like, for me, I got a lot of messaging when I was young about not being selfish. So that played into this too. It was like, I think there was a story running for a lot of years, like, how do I show the world how unselfish I am? And that's work in nonprofits, and that's work really, really hard, and that's don't have boundaries, and that's don't even know your capacity, let alone communicate it. So there's a way that like our care can almost be used against us, or like there's a false narrative that if we care a lot, we're a better person. But then what's the limit to being a better person? Like, where are we located in that? Where are our own boundaries? Where are our own like capacity? Yeah, I could talk about that topic for hours because it's so interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's a paradox, right? It's very much both and of the question that I asked, like, why can't my care be smaller? I think those were questions that I was asking before, that I've now figured out how to not have that be the question I'm actually answering anymore.
Yeah, totally.
Right. And one of the things that I often think about for myself, and then because I work with money, right? It's about both caring for others and also including myself, in the care, having clients care for others, but including themselves and the collective and the community, like their well-being is part of collective well-being, that it's not. And I think also the way that I posed that question, and I love that we're both sensitive and like really looking into like one question for 20 minutes. It's always just because it has so much context to it.
Yeah.
But the way that I pose the question also makes it sound as if it were a zero-sum game.
Yeah.
Right? It's all or nothing. And it isn't. Care can be very incremental and it can be very nuanced.
Yes.
And I think learning how to bring ourselves into care. Yes. Because when you said not being selfish, I think a lot of us that are gendered women, anyone who's just many of us, especially those of us that are sensitive, we just want to care for others. And it can be so easy to give and give and give.
Yeah.
And feel that I'll take care of myself later, except like what you said, right? And I think many of us have experienced that burnout of like, I can't give anymore. There's nothing left to give.
Yes. Yeah. And it's so tempting. It's so tempting. Like, I love how you brought up being gendered as women and having that, we get this social conditioning our whole lives that our worth is dependent on how helpful we are and how much we can contribute and care for other people. So the idea of including ourselves, to use your word, I love that word, including, it's kind of foreign to a lot of people. I once gave a workshop on self-compassion, and there were multiple people in the workshop that were like, oh, I didn't realize you could do that. Like, I thought compassion was only going out. I didn't realize you could also have it coming in. It was so interesting. I was like, wow, yeah, like we don't really get taught that. We're taught that like our care goes out towards causes and towards people and towards, everyone else.
Yes, our care only goes out. And then there's also this weird sensation of like, if I have to ask for help, if I have to ask for care, then I'm being weak. Right? So it's really like this hierarchy, this fictitious hierarchy. Whereas if we move out of that completely and see how interconnected we are. I mean, sometimes I was talking with a friend earlier who said that like sometimes she needs to ask other people to come and cook for her, and sometimes she goes and cooks for them, and it's not a tit for tat. It's more of like being in fluid relationship.
Yes. Ooh, I love how you said that. Yes. Yeah. And allowing ourselves to receive, that balance between giving and receiving is pretty confronting if you really look at it. Who am I if I'm only giving? Who am I if I can't receive? And what is that about? Like, what is the thing I'm trying to prove or show people if I'm only giving?
And if I think it's not good for me to receive, what do I think of other people who do receive?
Yeah. Ooh, that one gave me goosebumps on my shoulders.
Am I judging other people who are receiving? But
That's it. Bingo, Diana. Yeah.
And I want to transition into the other big part of this topic, podcast, which is money.
Yeah.
And a question that I love asking people just to have additional context is, what was the financial background of your childhood?
Yeah.
And how do you see that it may affect the work that you do today?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, I was thinking about this before getting on the call. I grew up in a home where we had farmers on both sides of my family, so more directly on my mom's side than my dad's, but a lot of hard work and doing whatever it takes and earning and struggle. I got a lot of messages about, you've got to earn money. It's going to be hard. It's probably going to be painful. The hours will be long. I did grow up comfortable. Like I didn't feel like there was a lot where my sister and I, like, there were things that we wanted and we didn't have, but there wasn't a lot of extra. My dad was a civil engineer and my mom was a teacher. So it was like, we were somewhere in the middle there growing up. And I think the benefits of growing up until I was about 6 years old next to the farm or part of the farm that my grandpa and uncle ran was that like I could see how things sort of work together. And I really got, at a young age, a real obsession around growth and nature and like what we tend to grows and blooms. You'll hear that on my podcast, Outgrow the Grind. Like, I love growth metaphors. So I think that the nature part really kind of spoke to me as a kid and continues to speak to me in my work as a coach. But then there's also this part, it's so funny, it's so linked to the title of my podcast, Outgrow the Grind, because I also learned from a young age, the connection with money was that like earning money would be a grind. It would be hard. It would be painful.
I wanted to just pause and say, like, you grew up seeing nature, and then when you needed to take a respite for yourself, you took time off to work at a flower garden. So I love that you like were like, what actually would feel really good, and it was back to growing and tending.
Yeah, I hadn't made that connection. That's funny. Yeah, I wish I was at a garden. I was kind of selling like flowers in a retail shop. But yeah, there is that appreciation that I think has been a thread, like going back to nature, going back to what grows. That's been a thread. I love that you connected that.
Yeah. Well, and just hearing that you grew up next to a farm when you were very young, and you said several times, like, earning money is going to be hard, painful, long hours. I'm assuming, given what we know about the nonprofit world, that while you were in the nonprofit world, those things were true about money.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And there was almost like a unwritten rule, like the harder you worked, the more hours you worked, the more successful you'd be. So there was a lot of, overriding of that capacity, overriding of personal boundaries, a lot of like, oh yeah, like I can take that shift at 2:00 in the morning on the hotline, or I can like write this grant on a Saturday. Sure. Yeah. And it's been really interesting getting into this world of coaching and facilitation and create, a lot of what I do is very creative. It's like, hey, I want to run a women's circle and I want to model the different phases of growth after plant phases, seed, sprout, grow, bloom. And I have this idea and I'm going to tell people about it. Like, and it actually feels quite easy, which is really difficult for me sometimes because there's still a part of me, an old part of me saying, work is hard. You got to earn things. You've got to struggle. And coaching and facilitation often doesn't feel like a struggle. It feels joyful. It feels, I don't want to say easy, but at times it's like, I'm just being who I am.
Well, it's a flow.
Yeah.
Right? You're not working against yourself.
Yes.
And I don't know if this is your experience, but for myself, if I want to be creative, if I want to be connected, I need to be rested. So
yeah,
I've had coaches teach me how rest is part of my work.
Yeah, that's really key. Yeah, and that investing, again, I think there's a theme here, that like two-way. Like if I'm going to pour into others, I also need to pour into myself. Like I want to pour from an overflowing cup, not an empty cup.
Definitely. And I know that as you were getting prepared for this podcast, you mentioned a few resources that were really helpful in kind of changing your money mindset.
Yeah.
Although, I mean, money is one of those things that since we learned what it is as kids until we lose cognitive capacity, we're in relationship with it.
Yes.
And we can have really hardwired grooves, right? So if money can still feel hard, painful, long, I'm curious of how you've looked to tweak those things.
Yeah. The resources that I sent you, I can kind of grow through them. That's funny. Go through them and grow through them. And I think like the overarching theme for me is learning that my relationship with money, that I can define it, that I can create it, I can design it. I don't have to take what my parents gave me. I don't have to take the blueprint and just repeat it for the rest of my life. Like, I think with any field where there's coaching involved or like personal growth in any area, whether it's money, relationships, taking better care of our bodies, whatever it is. I think people need a reminder, like, oh yeah, like I'm in charge. I get to design this how I want. And we forget. We forget and we take those blueprints and we act them out. And I think these resources were helpful for me because they showed me different ways to do this, different designs, different blueprints. I grew up in a home where my dad had multiple spreadsheets. He saved every receipt. Money seemed really complicated and really hard and really intimidating and really like laborious. I would kind of see him stacking up receipts and doing the reconciliation in two places all the time. And I was like, whoa, that sounds like a full-time job in itself.
Well, he sounds like an engineer though, too.
Yes, that's a good point. That's a good
like
point.
Engineering clients, they love it.
Yep.
They love it.
There you go. That's it. Nailed it. Yeah. And then my mom, on the other hand, was like really like not really connected to it. She was like, oh, we're going to want to do this. I'm going to, this thing's on sale. I'll get it, and not, it was really more his department. So, and no shade to my parents if they're listening, but I just saw really two very extreme blueprints. And so as an adult, starting to seek out other blueprints, there were 3 books that I found really super helpful. The first is Tosha Silver's book, It's Not Your Money. And I loved this book because it helped me kind of zoom out on money. We live in a culture that's very like mine, 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 mine. My worth is defined by the amount in my checking account. There's a grasping. There's like again, I think some struggle in earning stuff. And her book really allows you or invites you to think about it as like there's a lot of money. Like the world is abundant. The universe and the divine wants to support me and my relationship with money. It doesn't have to be this grasping sort of hoarding, collecting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or is there some, like what I was mentioning earlier,
exactly right?
I have access to something. It doesn't mean that you don't have access to it. You have access to it in a different way.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And what I loved about her book is like, there's a lot of questions around like our inner child. Like, what does she need? And what does she need from me that money maybe can't buy?
I love that question. We so often ask money to do things that like money can't do. That's just not what money does.
Yes. Yeah.
Give you a sense of belonging, give you comfort, care. Like it can pay the rent. Yeah. But it can't create a home.
It can't give you a hug.
Yes.
Very well. Yeah. So I love that book. And she also has this really gorgeous abundance prayer at the beginning of it. And I know folks who, I did this for a little while, will read that abundance prayer in the morning and kind of start their day with that just to, bring in abundance. And it's almost like a ritual and space to reconnect with the divine and what's out there and release the grip on the chasing that happens so much with money. So that was the first one. Overcoming Under-Earning by Barbara Stanny. She's gotten married. Her last name is now Huron. Or no, it's Houston, I think.
Houston, yeah. And and that's a classic. I really love that book too. And all of these books will be included in the show notes.
Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah, that one really was a big one for me because it got me asking the questions of like, why am I okay with earning less? And there's an interesting overlap there with nonprofits. Like we live in a society that kind of says, oh, the nonprofit sector, like these people have big hearts. They're okay with earning less. They're okay with, not being able to pay their rent. Like that just never made sense to me. It's a sector that creates jobs and has goals and does really good things for the world. So the fact that that sector makes less than the corporate sector and for-profit sector, it's like these things don't match up. And then there's like the The Dan Pelota has an amazing TED Talk on this. You've probably seen it around. There's so much incentive for nonprofits to have zero overhead, which makes no sense because they need to pay rent. They need computers. They need to buy paper. They need stamps. They need employees. And those employees need benefits. So this idea that like nonprofits are supposed to do everything on a shoestring budget and also have great people who want to work there.
And it definitely does not make sense, because if someone is being underpaid at a nonprofit to provide care, but they themselves are not resourced enough to do it, they haven't taken the care that they haven't taken the rest that they need, they haven't taken a vacation, they're worried about retirement, they're not going to be able to provide good quality care. So I'm totally on board with just, we value the product of nonprofits, but then we're not giving the resources to nonprofits that they need, especially right now and with all the changes happening in this administration.
Yes. Like the funding cuts are, they're hitting the nonprofits that need the most, the hardest, the people that are the most marginalized, the most in need of services. Those nonprofits' budgets are being slashed. And that is a heartbreaking whole nother issue. So there's, back to overcoming under-earning. What I love about that book is that you go through a process and you're asking questions of yourself, like what am I believing about myself to be okay with under-earning? What are the stories I'm telling myself around under-earning? What am I making it mean if I earn less than other people? So great questions. It's almost like a workbook that you can go through and answer. And it's an older book. I mean, I forget when it was published, but I still find it withstands the test of time.
Yeah, because the situation that it's addressing hasn't really changed. Right. And I know she has another great book. The title is Prince Charming Isn't Coming. And just telling women we have to be in this conversation.
Yeah. And Sacred Success is a good one too. She interviewed, I think it was women that were 6 or 7 figure earners and asked them, what some of their secrets to sacred success were. So that's a good one too. And this third book, Karen McCall's book, Financial Recovery. So I first was introduced to Karen McCall through Barbara Hewson. Karen was Barbara's original money coach. And Karen's book, Financial Recovery, what I got out of it was the importance of distinguishing needs from wants. So, and she has so many incredible frameworks that people can use to sort of look at what's the psychological side of money? What's the psychological side of spending? I could talk a lot about my own patterns. When I'm feeling lonely and burned out, I spend way more money on food and eating out because there's a little voice inside me that says, you're going to feel less alone and you're going to feel better if you're treating yourself and you're going out to a restaurant and you're taking yourself on a solo date. That's going to feel good. And there's a little bit of truth to that. There's a little bit that's fun about that, but it's also asking well, how much money did that cost? And what was my real experience? Was I really savoring every bite of that dinner? Was I enjoying myself, or was I kind of doing it as a response to try to fill something that I wasn't feeling?
Yeah. I love that example too. I remember having a conversation with a client who was transitioning from something that she was no longer interested in to something that she was more interested in that would have a pay cut. And one of the things that she realized was that what had the higher income, this is not always the case. Higher income does not immediately come with burnout, but for her in that situation, it was. There was more, it felt more extractive, right? She was leaving the work depleted. With her new work, she wasn't feeling depleted. She was actually feeling like nourished by it and rested, and she loved what she was doing. So a lot of the things that she had been doing before for self-care that required cost, if it was massages, eating out, new outfits to feel comfortable for the client presentations, they were now being replaced with like walks and more time with her dog and just things that didn't need money, and not out of a sense of deprivation, just out of a sense of like a lot of the things we really need, money's not relevant for them.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that is such a good point. And I could so relate to that. I had a job, like my first well-paying job, I'll say. I was so unhappy because it wasn't actually a fit for my personality. And I was like going out for drinks like almost every night. And I thought, like, if I drink enough of these fancy cocktails in a big city, I think I might feel better about my job. And then it was like, I'd get to the end of the month and get ready to pay rent. And I'd be like, what did I spend my money on this month? Like, oh yeah, I was like trying to balance out this thing of like not really enjoying the job that I was earning more than I ever had, but I'm spending more than I ever had to try to like balance it out. And that gets to be a really like, not so fun game.
And I feel that sensitives, we have more awareness about all kinds of things, but especially here, because I also remember having that experience at a previous job. I was considering, I think they were about to give me a promotion. I was thinking, do I want to go for it? Do I not? And I had the thought, I'm going to have to drink more if I take that.
Wow. That is
and it was so clear that I'm like, oh, that's actually not part of my life plan. Like drinking more to tolerate work is not really what it's going back to like, you can decide.
Yeah.
I'm really grateful that I had enough like wherewithal to be like, oh, that's not the coping strategy that I
not a good sign.
Not a good
love
sign.
that,
I should
Diana.
move on.
Oh, what a good example. Yeah, that's so good. Yeah, and I think also back to Karen's book, like something that's really helped me over the years is to really look at like what is the need underneath the want. Like if I was feeling lonely, like what do I really need? Like, oh, I need connection. I need to maybe call my best friend more. I don't really need to go out to eat 4 days a week. Or looking at my relationship too. I had an epiphany. I took a course of Karen's as well. She has some like courses that she does. And I had this epiphany that like, why is it that, my windshield wipers will go bad and I'll sort of be like, I can fix those later. But then when it comes to a want, like, oh, I'm going to get my nails done or I'm going to go out to eat, like those felt easy to take care of. But my needs, like windshield wipers or buying contact lenses or doing kind of the boring sort of maintenance stuff that was directly related to my needs, I had less of a relationship with those. So that was interesting, like that inquiry, like why is it that I find it way easier to spend money on some of these wants than actually honor my needs? What's that about? And her book goes into all of that.
That's a really interesting question. It's making me think of another author whose work I love also on money, Barry Tesler. She works on somatic finances. Yeah. And one of the suggestions that she has for people is that when you're looking at what you spend your money on, maybe renaming categories, renaming rent into like Home Sweet Home or Love Shack or like whatever it is, so that it feels more included in the things that are providing for you, as opposed to like have tos or must haves. Yeah. And I don't know if that was part of your experience with like trying to figure out like those needs and wants, how to decipher which way to move. Yeah.
Yeah, it was almost like I had more of an appetite for making do with my needs than I did for making do with my wants. So it'd be like, oh, I really should order more contact lenses. Oh, well, like I'm supposed to wear each one for 4 weeks. I'll just wear them for 8 weeks because it'll be cheaper. Like where are the places where I'm like scraping by and making do and getting into that deprivation? And I realized like it's more with my needs than my wants. And what's that about? Like really interesting question to ask.
Well, thanks for bringing in those resources. Those are
Yeah.
great.
Yeah. Thanks for giving them some space. I hope they're helpful to listeners and viewers.
As you were moving from your work in nonprofit to then working into personal development, now 6 years into your beautiful business, I see that you focus on sensitives. But is that where you started? Like, how did you start to refine into them? Or did you know from the get-go, sensitives, that's who I work for?
Great question. No, I didn't know at all. That's only been kind of a recent development. I have struggled. I don't know if other coaches can relate, but struggled a little bit figuring out how to describe my clients and my niche and the work I do and the people I work with. It's very easy to want to talk about like transformation, and regular clients they didn't go to coaching school. They don't know about transformation or fulfillment or resonance, maybe. That
Or like
language may
the
not.
term limiting beliefs. They're like, what is that?
Right.
What do I care?
Exactly. So, there was a lot of discovery. Like I used to say I work with deeply caring high achievers. Or what are some of the other ones I used? I'm drawing a blank on it right now. But it wasn't until learning for myself that I was a highly sensitive person, which was only probably 2 or 3 years ago. I met Val and she was like, hey, there's this quiz. Like, if you feel like you might be highly sensitive, like, would you be willing to check it out and try it? And I did. And I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. Like, I had this like world opening moment of, wow, I didn't realize I was sensitive. I didn't realize that not everyone is, like watching for cues on everyone's face in a meeting and noticing when we need to course correct for that person in that corner and when we need to like ask a question of that person because they feel disengaged. Like there's a radar we have as sensitive people that is just always on. And I thought everybody had that. Turns out not true. So over time, I changed my messaging and really got clear that it's more sensitive folks that I work with. And I sort of got away from the gender stuff. For a long time, I was like, I work with deeply caring, high achieving women. And I absolutely love working with women, but it's less important that somebody is gendered as a woman than, if they identify as a sensitive high achiever. I can support people of all genders that are sensitive high achievers.
Yeah. And it sounds like you now really focus on, or you always have, but didn't have the word for it. You've always catered to sensitive clients and what they may need.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I do have a women's circle that does center women. But yeah, I really love working with all kinds of clients that are in that position of, wow, I care. I want to make a difference. I want to contribute, but I want to do it in a way that doesn't cause a ton of self-sacrifice and self-abandonment. And I'm here to say it is possible. You can change it.
Yeah, I love that of coming back to your capacity, which is what we started, right? When your care is bigger than your capacity. Your journey started with really centering social justice in your work. Now, as a coach, how do you see that come in, if at all, into your work? Or is it mostly something you do with your personal care, with your personal time?
Yeah, that is a great question. I will start with, on the personal side, I have some favorite wonderful nonprofits that I love and support. And that's a really important thing for me to put my attention, time, money into places making a difference in my community here in Athens. And then on my business side, I offer tiered equity-based pricing. And I use a model that was created by Alexis Cunningfolk. I think it's called the green bottle method, which is a sliding scale method looking at people's class and financial experience. And then they get to decide the price point that they pay for services like coaching or my women's circle. So that's really important to me. Like, I don't think charging the same amount to everyone across different financial experiences, different classes, like that just doesn't make any sense to me. And this model, I can send you the link if you want to add it in the show notes, is really
Please.
fantastic because people self-select. So there's the full bottle where people's needs and wants are met. They don't often have to like opt out of things. There's a bottle in the middle where it's about half and half. Like sometimes my needs and wants are met, sometimes they're not. And then there's like a bottle that has just a little bit of liquid in it, and it's like I have less to give and I need a lower price point in order to say yes to this experience. So I really love that it gives people the agency to choose, where am I, which of the three makes sense for me. And that can change. So sometimes I've worked with clients that are like, I'm in this tier today, and then they'll come back and they want to come back to coaching, and now they're in a different tier. I think for sensitive people, choice is so important, and multiple access points are so important. And to me, that's also inclusive and equitable to give people multiple options for accessing services.
Yeah, the first time I encountered something like that, I remember feeling really proud of where I could contribute at the job that I was at. I was like, oh, this is great. I'm getting to support people who can't contribute at this level.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes people might feel like, oh, that's not fair. But it really depends how you define fair. I use something similar for my sliding scale. And if there are potential clients who are turned off by it, then we weren't a good fit. So it ends up being like a client filter too.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. And it's like, it goes back to something we were talking about earlier, that sort of like being part of something, like being part of a collective, that flow between, giving and receiving. And it's great to be able to support something honestly, truly at the level you're able to afford, not give more than you actually can, similar to the care and capacity sort of metric, but also know that if you are able to give more, you're supporting a neighbor that isn't. So there's something really beautiful about that, like ecosystem of giving and receiving and being in that together.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And I know for myself doing that kind of pricing, I have several different contracts. And like one of my contracts provides the largest portion of my income, and that one isn't accessibility priced. Mm-hmm. That way I'm like combating the tendency to under earn, the tendency to be like, I care so much about this person. Sure, I can give them my time, even though the rate is whatever it is.
Yes.
Right. And I'm curious if you're open to sharing, like, how do you navigate that? Because listeners who may be thinking, how would I be able to provide services like that? How do I also make sure that I'm not left out in the cold?
Yes. Yeah. What a great question. Yeah. I find that for organizations and for-profit organizations that are able to able to pay higher, like the pricing for my work with organizations is higher than individuals. So that does supplement my ability to be able to do this. Very similar to yours. Like there's this income that I can count on that's at a certain level, that's in their budget as well. So it's kind of that like meeting clients where they are and looking at what's realistic and reasonable and makes sense on both sides of this energy exchange.
Yeah. And it's really important that people feel really comfortable having the conversation, first of all, with themselves of like, what are my needs? What are my wants? What is my rent? What are my student loan payments?
Yes.
And then advocating for themselves with new clients.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think what you're pointing to that's really important, Diana, is like we as coaches, like we need to model. It's really important to model the work that we're doing with our clients, to walk this talk of inquiry and asking ourselves these hard questions and tending to our own growth as well. That feels really important to me.
Yes.
In years of being in business by myself, but not really by myself.
by yourself as part of a collective. And
yes, exactly. Yeah. Like a community garden.
Mm-hmm. Well, Stacy, we're coming up on our time. It's been such a pleasure to have you here. I'll make sure to link your podcast, your website, your women's circles, also the resources you mentioned during today's call. Is there anything you'd like to add or mention as we start to wrap up?
Thank you so much. I really appreciated our time together. I loved our conversation. I felt like, there's a lot we could talk about and connect on. I do want to add that I'm doing a call every single month on the new moon. We have one coming up this weekend. I don't know when this comes out, but it's called Nurture Your Nervous System. And I co-lead this with my friend David Andrews. And it's this 1 hour, it's free. People show up on Zoom. We do some element of grounding, some element of creativity, some element of just connecting as big-hearted human beings. I've been loving it. We've been doing this since the beginning of the year, and it's turned into David and I, it's one of our highlights of the year so far to be able to hold this space for people. So we'd love to invite you, to invite your listeners, everyone is invited to nurture their nervous system with us.
I love that. All right. Well, thank you, Stacy.
Yeah, thank you.
It was such a pleasure having Stacy join us today and share her journey from burnout to building a practice rooted in joy, intuition, and equity. Her reflections on money, boundaries, and capacity are a powerful reminder that we can choose to rewrite old scripts and design new ways of being. I also love all of her growth metaphors and her invitation to truly consider the needs beneath the wants. Thank you for joining me on Highly Sensitive Money. I'm Diana Giselle Yanez, and I hope this episode helped you see how money and sensitivity can work together while honoring our interconnected well-being. We have the power to create a system where everyone's needs are met because nature is abundant. If you found value in today's conversation, please take a moment to leave a review and share this episode with someone who could benefit. Your support helps this message reach more people navigating their own financial journeys. A thank you goes to Mike Schul for the music and Juan Antonio Nunez for producing. For more resources on bringing money and social justice together, sign up for my monthly newsletter over at allthecolors.net. I also invite you to schedule a free 30-minute call where we can talk about money coaching, investment management, and all things money and social justice. Until next time, remember that your sensitivity and deep thinking is your superpower.